Hello there gamers, I'm Pruitt, this is Jim Davis, and today on WebDM we're taking a break from class, but we're not going to stop the learning because we're discussing VOLO'S Guide to Monsters. VOLO'S Guide, Jim Davis.
VOLO'S Guide, the newest offering from our friends and overlords. Wizards of the Coast.
We have both versions here, both the variant and the original.
Yep.
I wanted to go, I wanted my stuff to match, so.
I was really looking forward to this one since it was announced.
Uh-oh.
And I don't usually get in on the preview hype game for most of these books. I don't want to know what's coming out for them. I want to get the book and have a clean slate that to experience the book. But I kept up with the previews for this one. Right off the bat, if this is the style of offering that the D&D team is going to offer us, like a once-a-year book, then I'm okay with that. I wish there was more, and I know I might have said on other shows that there's a part of me that longs for the days of the 3rd edition, like a wall of D&D books. But I also don't spend all of my paycheck on D&D books anymore. Well, and I've never used half of that, didn't use most of that material. So yeah, if I'm getting 1 or 2 quality books a year and they're on the same, they're on par with VOLO'S, then I'm gonna be happy with that. Because this book is really awesome and has something for everyone. Yeah. And it's not like previous editions of D&D where there's like the DM book, the player book, the adventure book. This has all of it, and there's something for DMs, something for players, something to help you with your campaign, something to flesh out your monsters, something to add something to your game, new monsters to look at, in-depth look at iconic monsters to freshen them up a bit. Oh yeah. It's got all of that. And so if you haven't picked it up yet, if you're still waiting, you're on the fence, our first impressions, the book hasn't been out long enough for us to dig into all the monsters and see what they're like in actual play.
I bought this 2 days ago.
Yeah, but our first impressions are that this is a great book, and DMs and players alike should find it very useful.
So in the fictional telling, what that Volothamp
Godarm, yes.
Yeah. What information that he's provided? What's some of your top stuff that you like? What do you like?
So the book's divided into sort of these 3 sections. There's what I'm going to call monster mythology, sort of lore sections. Right. And some of them are quite extensive. The ones on giants and goblins are very extensive, but they go into sort of the culture of these monsters. What are they like? What are their motivations? Where does it come from? Something, if you like the intro text in the monster manual, if you like reading those bolded headings, those little paragraphs, and you're drawing inspiration for your adventures from that, which I would highly encourage DMs to do. That information is there for a reason. Yeah. Otherwise, they would just give you a stat block. Then you're going to get a lot out of these the monsters that they highlight in depth in that chapter.
The only one I've really read is Beholders. I enjoyed it a lot.
Enjoyed it a lot. I haven't had a chance to read all of them. The ones I've kind of picked my way through the book, jumping around here and there. Out of the monster lore sections, the 2 that stand out to me the most that I really liked were the Goblinoids and the Hags. Yeah. Goblinoids, they go into a great detail about the relationship between Goblin, Hobgoblin, and Bugbear, what happens when they all get together, what do they look like when they live individually, separate from each other, what does a traditional sort of Goblinoid encampment look like, and how to work them into a campaign. And I find that if you're reading through those monster lore sections and your mind is not starting to come up with this is what the adventure would look like, then start thinking in those terms. Yeah. Read through them and go, what would this look like as a campaign? Because an invasion by a goblin host it is a great tier 1 and 2 style campaign. And there you've got easily 10 levels of, we're starting off with goblin wolf riders or raiding the farms, and you end up with, we fought the hobgoblin warlord on the back of his wyvern as his army raged against ours below. That kind of thing. The Hag is another one of those. This is, as far as I'm aware, this may be one of the first times that we've gotten this much in-depth detail on Hags, what they're like, their plots, their minions.
There's quite a bit. I haven't read it, but I have skimmed through it, and I knew that you would love it.
I really like hags as a monster. I think they're great. And obviously, if you've watched our Curse of Razzle Sin game, you see sort of what an example of what a hag could do. Yes, spoiler if you haven't seen it. And I would definitely incorporate in a follow-up to that game, or if I were running that game again for another group, would definitely incorporate some of the material on hags that's in Volos.
Yeah.
I would say just in general, for those 9 monsters that are in the monster lore sections, they are great. And I'm sitting there reading, flipping through the Beholders. I first got the book, I'm opening it up, just kind of flipping through. I noticed that there's a section on Beholder tactics. And some of that is sound tactical advice from people who seem like they understand the game that they made. Sometimes game designers don't have a clue about the game that they made.
Right.
But it seems like they have a grasp on the mechanical implications of the Beholder as a monster and how parties are going to interact.
Well, and there's also a part in there about how they use all of their rays outside of combat.
Yes.
Like when just dealing with their minions and stuff like that. And it's just like, I love that.
That's just interesting stuff. And that will help DMs sort of prepare. What does their lair look like? What do they do when they're not there? And so I was reading through that section. I hadn't yet gotten to the end of the Beholder section. In my mind, I'm going like, well, where is my random minion table? And then lo and behold, a couple pages later, there it is. And I found that for every one of the monsters, as I was reading through it, I was like, I need some gameable material here. I need a chart. I need a table. I need something that will help me create an encounter and an adventure. And this book delivers on that.
It provides all of that. It tells you about all their minions, what kinds of minions and how many numbers.
It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, and you can use that as a skeleton to create a larger adventure. And so each one of those, I see each one of the lore chapters is an adventure in its own right. And you can even say it could take up an entire tier's worth of play. So that, say, a Beholder style adventure that features, say, a Beholder colony and infestation. Maybe there's a hive mother that's controlling a bunch of Beholder variants and everything. And you've got to get rid of them or attack them, or there's some kind of invasion from the far realm. That's a good, say, like tier 3 campaign that's going to occupy you for 5 levels or so. Or the Kobold, clearing out a Kobold warren, dealing with a Kobold infestation. That's a great like tier 1. By the time you're 5th level, you should be mopping the floor with some Kobolds. But now you're in their, by the time you're 5th level, you're in their lair, having to deal with all their traps, the fact they're hit and run attacks on you and wearing you down. And the fact that you're 5th level means that you can survive that. But that also means the DM can pull no punches. And what kind of things the kobolds have in store for you. So I like those. The goblin and the hag are 2 that stand out to me as being that I really like. But all of the monster lore sections have this great quality of they've got good gameable material, stuff you can use at the table to create adventures, to flesh out your monsters. The fact that we've got personality traits for so many of these monsters means that the monsters become NPCs. And not just something to kill.
It's a goblin to kill.
It's a goblin to kill. And in a lot of ways, I like it because I'm really liking playing through Curse of Strahd right now, because it seems like if you were really going to run that adventure well, and who knows, I might run Curse of Strahd after I've played through it for a different group or just whatever. But if you were going to, the monsters that are there are not necessarily meant to be killed. I mean, you can, but for the most part, they show up in overwhelming numbers, and at levels you can't really tackle them. So you have to treat the monsters like NPCs. You have to negotiate. You have to maybe not necessarily, go in like we're going to slaughter all these, but just like, well, we've got to negotiate. This book will give you give DMs the tools to turn their monsters into NPCs. And mean that it's not just all combat all the time when their monsters show up.
Right. They're not just one-dimensional, bags of hit points and experience. It actually can be kind of something to interact with. Part of the living, breathing world, and they make sense. They have motivation.
Moving on to chapter 2 of it.
Those NPC races.
The new player races, really fun. First off, they've gone and done something that I didn't think they were going to be able to do. They've made Aasimar more interesting than Tieflings. And usually it's the opposite. Usually everybody's tiefling this and tiefling that, and they're more interesting, and they've got their edgy and dark, whatever. But I think
can make an edgy and dark Aasimar now.
Absolutely, certainly can. You can get your emo haircut. You can get your
I'm divine.
Get your black guy liner and do whatever you want. The 3 sort of sub races for the Aasimar, I feel like you get a lot of variation there.
Oh, definitely.
The abilities are interesting without being and add something without being overpowered, I think.
Definitely.
A little disappointed to see a Goliath reprint.
Well, I'm just wondering. I mean, I don't know what they would have published, but there are other races that you could.
I was really kind of hoping for something like, the name escapes me, Thrycreen, just sort of a weird player race.
Yeah, just
is what I was really hoping for.
Out of left field.
Just something out of left field.
Yeah, because having Goliath in there, maybe they just didn't have anything else. But I mean, it's been in another book, and we don't get that many books, like you pointed out.
Yeah, and so I mean, in some ways, there's the Deep Gnome made a similar appearance both in the Elemental Evil Player's Guide and in Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide.
Yeah.
So I think that there's precedent for it, and I'm sure there's a reason for it, for Goliath showing up here. It's not enough to make me want to burn the book. Just slightly disappointing whenever I was looking at it.
Yeah.
But that is outweighed by the fact that we've got Tabaxi, we've got Tritons. You can play a Yuan-ti Pureblood. You can play a Bugbear.
Yeah.
We've got Goblins.
Goblins. We've got Orcs, Hobgoblins. Although Hobgoblins are slightly disappointing.
Hobgoblins are slightly disappointing. I think it's harder to see what classes they're going to be really good at. And I think that and they might make really good Eldritch Knights.
Thank you. That's what I was going to say. That the Hobgoblin to me, well, maybe not even Eldritch Knight, but like something more caster oriented that still wants to use weapons.
Yeah.
Because they get that bonus to intelligence, and they get those martial weapons.
They get martial weapons, so
any fighter style.
Any fighter style is going to get. So it's very edge cases here. So I'm thinking like you're playing an Abjurer or Evoker Hobgoblin, and you want and you want that
uses a longsword,
and you don't want, for whatever reason you don't or can't take a 1-level dip into fighter.
Yeah.
The big thing for me is their stat boosts, +2 con, +1 intelligence. Nothing really uses con as a primary stat. Con's more sort of like a universal secondary stat. So I might say something like they get +1 con, +1 int, +1 strength, or they get +2 con and a choice of +1 int or +1 strength. Give some versatility to them. But that said, I've always been a fan of Hobgoblins. In most homebrew worlds I make, Hobgoblins and Goblins are playable races.
Yeah.
They are fully integrated into the societies of the world.
But Goblins, though.
Man, oh my God. So Goblin is one of those where I can think of about 5 Goblins I would want to play right now. A Moon Druid Goblin, who's just like a scrawny little Yoda-like kind of thing, and then he turns into a cave bear and just mauls you. The sneaky, Goblin Assassin.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that I would want to play with them. The Bugbear is one that until I saw it, I really hadn't considered much about playing Bugbear, but now the mind reels with possibilities of assassins and shadow monks. And
that's what I want it so bad. I want a Bugbear shadow monk with a 3-level dip into rogue assassin. Oh, all of death, all of it.
Stuff. I am disappointed by the Orc for several reasons. Number one, I don't like the stat penalty. Both the Orc and the Kobold get a stat penalty, and I think there are more elegant ways to do that. So I think Kobold, I would remove the strength stat penalty and instead take something like Sleight Build, which would be a reverse of the Goliath and Orc ability, sort of like they count as one size smaller for the purposes of carrying capacity, things like that. So you don't have to sacrifice in combat and ability, but it does kind of reflect sort of like they are small, slight, kind of wimpy little creatures.
That makes sense.
I know some people aren't pleased by the fact that kobolds are now shoehorned into the having to beg and cower.
The groveling, pitiful. Yeah, I mean, but it's how I've always seen them.
Right.
I guess so. I understand it, but it is a bit of a blanket stereotype.
I do think, and coming back to the Orc, I'm not pleased with the penalty they get to intelligence. I think you could just erase that penalty to intelligence, and it would not be. No one would notice. But what I find frustrating is they don't share any of the features that I like about half-orc. And so I would feel like that they need maybe relentless endurance, maybe even brutal critical.
There's a bit of a disconnect, isn't there?
Yeah.
You look at human, and you look at orc, and then you look at half-orc, and
there's like nothing connects the three of them. Unlike human, elf, half-elf, you can see the connections.
Yeah.
Where I look at orc, human, half-orc, and I don't see any connections between these things.
Yeah.
And I would like to see a stronger connection between orcs and half-orcs.
Because seriously, half-orc, that's a beast of a class.
Yeah.
And if you want to get metagame with it, imagine like some tyrannical eugenics overlord who gets a bunch of humans and orcs to breed them because he realizes that half-orcs are more powerful anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I could see, if you're taking just taking sort of the lore of the orc, I like that their lore chapter kind of fleshes them out, sort of makes their gods a bigger part of their lives, and sort of lets us know what does an orc warband look like. But I can also see a half-orc in that scenario. First off, half-orc spellcasters are gonna, I can see them gravitating more towards that. In my mind, I have a half-orc evoker in me somewhere that I want to play. And just be a half-orc evoker. It doesn't make sense. There are better choices for evoker, but this is what I am.
But sometimes it's not about min-maxing. It's just about playing a concept, and that's what's beautiful.
Cool.
So let's move on to the expanded monsters.
So the expanded monsters.
We mentioned this a little bit in Druids.
Yeah.
As far as like the expanded beasts and fae, but on top of that,
so first off, there's a lot of old weird favorites coming back. There's flail snails. Yeah. There's frogamoths.
Flail snails.
There's the Kobold. And I find those monsters in there. First off, I'm glad that they're there. They're a part of D&D's weird gonzo history that at some point along the way got sort of excised out, and that I'm glad they're bringing back.
Because it's an odd experience. I mean, you see these creatures and you're like, what the hell is that? And your players are going to be like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah, who knows? I'm glad that the book is not filled with 101 variants of demons, devils, dragons, and giants. That said, I wish that we had gotten sort of leader types for the giants.
Yeah.
We didn't really get them in Storm King's Thunder. We got a little bit of variance on what the leaders of the giants look like. And we've got some.
I mean, there's like one for each.
There's one, but they're not like leader types. They're not like captains or jarls or, you're still going to have to sort of modify those stats yourself if you want to create a real diverse giant encounter. Yeah. That said, the giants that are in there are interesting. Even as I say, I'm glad they didn't have a bunch of devils and demons and dragons and stuff. I wish that there had been gym dragons. I wish that there had been Abishai. Those are Forgotten Realms specific.
Be careful what you don't wish for. You might not get it.
But it's the pitfall of a monster manual that it's filled with BS filler monsters that tend to be devils, demons, dragons, and giants. So I'm glad that they didn't do that. We got something different.
Yeah, and you get a lot of, especially the fae. Like that's the biggest thing.
A lot of new fae.
All the extra fae to be able to summon as a druid.
Yeah.
And the beast to turn into.
We're filling out the dinosaur spectrum there. We've got some stuff we can turn, there's new beasts, dolphins. For some reason, like the stench cow. It's a great, I might want to summon a stench cow with my druid.
It's a bit redundant, though.
It's a bit redundant. You can turn into a dolphin for your aquatic campaign. I'm seeing a Triton druid that,
like
wild
Aquaman?
shapes. Yeah, just kind of like Aquaman. Or a Triton Beastmaster that uses a reef shark or a dolphin or something to good effect. I don't know. I would also give dolphins pack tactics. That's just me, but I'm adding in pack tactics for my dolphins.
That's what they do, though.
Right. That's what
they swim around in a pod, and if they see an enemy, they all attack it at the same time.
Right. So in terms of highlights from the monsters, the Chorids and what I am calling ice hags, because I have no idea how to pronounce who knows? I am not
Bahir? No, that's not a Bahir.
It's not a Bahir. I am not fluent in whatever that looks like maybe Celtic. I don't know. Who knows where that word comes from? Maybe one of our viewers will be helpful and point it out to us.
I'm sure you will.
Let's hope so. But those are the two that stand out. So the Ice Hag has at-will hold person, 3 times Cone of Cold, Ice Storm, Wall of Ice, all for the low cost of a 7th level spell. I cast 1 7th level spell, summon a CR7 Fae. There we go.
But yeah, I mean, having an Ice Hag running around, trying to just hold everyone,
keep everybody held, using their concentration slot to do that. Yeah, and then if they kill something and they eat it in front of everybody, it makes everybody go crazy. And they can fly.
Now we eat.
Or the Chorid, who can, all right, I'm going to summon you as a Chorid. You've got a bunch of spell-like abilities, including the ability to, please, summon me an Earth Elemental.
Yeah.
So you get 2 creatures for the price of 1. The ubiquitous Earth Elemental. There he is. There's a lot of other things, Darklings, Quicklings, Meanlocks. Those are also going to be interesting things to summon for Fae. Red Caps.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more Fae that are in there. First off, those kinds of encounters and those kinds of adventures have more interesting options now, and particularly villainous Fae. Because I do kind of see, apart from the green and sea hags in the monster manual, most of the Fae in the base monster manual were kind of like, well, they're pixies and dryads and satyrs.
It's the summer court.
It's the summer court.
Let's and now we get some winter court
here in the VOLO'S Guide. There are some stinkers. I don't like the Dreyloths, the Glabrezu, Drow hybrid. The text in there, the flavor text goes on and on about their magical power. You look at their spell-like abilities, and they can cast darkness at will that they can't even see through. It's just I don't. There's a disconnect there that I'm not seeing. I don't know. I'm not pleased by the fact that the Elder Brain is CR 14. It looks like an Elder Brain that's accompanied by Mind Witnesses and Ulathards and other Mind Flayers and Intellect Devourers would probably make for a really nice balanced encounter. But just on its own, I see a Lithid Elder Brain is like CR 20 and above. These things are demigod status. Yeah. The fact that it's such a low CR, which brings a point about the guide, is it's still, the monsters in there are still skewed towards the low end of the CR scale.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I would, Wizards of the Coast has gone out many times and in their interviews and promo materials have said they've done all this market research that suggests that most campaigns don't go above 9th to 10th level. So their efforts are going to be skewed more towards that level, which creates that vicious cycle we talked about in high level play, where it's like, you guys don't give us adequate monsters to fight at tier 4 and above.
At high levels. So we don't.
So the because there's nothing to do. So market research reflects that no one does that.
So we don't do.
And it's like, and I get it. It is difficult to design monsters and adventures that can challenge high tier 4 characters.
Yeah.
It is difficult.
Yeah.
And no game designer sitting at Wizards of the Coast is going to know your table as well as you will in terms of what your characters can do when they get above 16th, 17th level. But the fact that you can look at this and there's like, the highest CR monster in there is a variant of the Lich. And it's just like they take the Lich, add some Mind Flayer traits to it. Here you go, you got a Mind Flayer Lich. And I just wish that there was more. And I wish that there had been an even distribution of CR types. So give us some CR 1s and 2s, give us some interesting stuff for those levels, something that's different, something that we can take our jaded, experienced, we've seen these goblins and kobolds so many times, and now you're fighting fire newts. Now you're fighting frog people. Now you're fighting vegapygmies. And they're just different.
Right.
I'm glad for that, but I wish that there had been more high-level monsters in there to for us to put in our high-level campaigns.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean from what I've seen in it. And so let's round out the back, which ironically is probably one of the most helpful. The appendix.
Yeah. And so I'm there's a brief appendix, a bit more, for a bit more beasts that we can use. The cow, obviously, as well as the dolphin, and the rot grub. Let's not forget the rot grub. The rot grub is an amazing monster that DMs you should always, I mean not always.
Not always, but throw one in there, because you could have a thing like we had one time where we had a character who got a couple, like a rot grub in a wound.
In his wound.
And we had to just cut his
fire damage, cut his arm off.
We just cut his arm off, and it's like, we didn't have any other way to get rid of it, and finally he was just like, cut it off, just cut it off.
So the context for this is not just any, you guys were in the sewers of Dis, which is on the second layer of hell.
Second layer of hell.
Which you guys had been kidnapped by a Frit, taken to the city of Brass, then sold to a bunch of devils.
Yeah. So it was an average day.
It was an average day. So you guys weren't maybe in the best of circumstances, but yes, a lowly rot grub cost a player PC his arm.
An arm. I got some amazing armor out of it.
That's very true.
Because later we killed an abyssal constrictor. That was great.
It was great. But so the rot grubs, give your kobolds jars, ceramic jars full of rot grubs, and have them throw them at the party and see what happens to those players.
Such a dick move. It is such a dick move, and do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
I dare you.
These are just kobolds? Sure, we'll go take them.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're covered in flesh-eating rot grubs.
Yeah.
So that's fun. But the NPC stat blocks in the appendix.
Just, oh God.
They're really great. And, it covers more archetypes for us. We've got a blackguard, sort of anti-paladin. We've got the champion, which a little bit of tweaking we can make into a paladin.
Yeah.
The knight from the regular monster manual also works there. We've got all different kinds of flavors of wizard. So that you're just like, you don't want to deal with it. You just don't want to deal with having to come up with your own spell list. You flip to the back of this, you go, okay, here's my evoker.
Yeah.
And that's it.
It's right there.
It's right there. The thing for me that's going to be the kicker of how successful I see this book and how useful I see it is if in future published adventures, when we're flipping through whatever comes after Storm King's Thunder, and in that bolded text, do we see monsters referenced in Volo's Guide? Or does Volo's Guide get shunted to the side and Wizards of the Coast only assumes that DMs have access to the monster manual and that there's otherwise, that the only monsters we're going to see in published adventures are from the monster manual? Or are we going to see Volo's Guide monsters in future adventures? Right. I don't know how they'll work out with that because they can't assume that every table will have a copy of the book. But it would be nice to see them start incorporating these monsters into adventures so that we can see how they're highlighted and what the designers of the game think about how they should be used.
That does seem to be the question at hand, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I don't know, what's next for Dungeons and Dragons. Whatever marketing and schedule release they have, I wish it were more, but I'm satisfied with what they're giving us. And at the same time, we haven't even played every adventure they've released, so I don't know what we would do if they started releasing more books.
That is true.
Just waste money on them.
And then we're back to breaking the book bank with 3rd edition.
Yes, and then we're back to the 3rd and 4th edition supplement treadmill.
Yeah.
Man, you guys just did 27 minutes.
We just talked almost for half an hour.
So just do a vanilla intro to Volos unless you can think of something awesome. I would say, because I was over there looking at the calendar, and I think we may want to do the next 2 classes episodes and then run this show because that puts it at November 30th, and it gives you the month of December. Maybe they want it for Christmas. Maybe they want December's a good idea to talk about a thing you can go get.
Yeah, I would.
So I would say I was thinking of doing 2 different things. One is either just vanilla. Hey, what's up? Volo's Guide, right? Well, finally, because you do it, blah blah blah. Just do a vanilla intro. But then at the same time, you can also say we're going to put a little pause in our series on classes so that we can talk about this awesome new book.
Yeah.
And then we could come back to multi-classing and then roll out the rest of the adventures. But we could also push multi-classing to the back of all these however you want to do it. So we can talk about that later.
The thing is in all of these shows we reference our multi-class episode.
Yeah.
And
so multi-class,
I think that needs to come out. That needs to go ahead and come out because we, like in all 4 of these, we talked about it in our multi-class episode. And so we're constantly referring to something that they haven't seen yet.
I would say multi-classing needs to come out before any of the shows we shot today. But I see if we want to just slip a Volo's Guide episode in whenever, I'm fine with that. And then we just this week it's a break from our class, whatever.
So we can address that in the intro, but we don't have to. And
today we're going to take a bit of recess from class.
But then at the same time, I don't want to walk it down to that because maybe they're watching this on their own.
Well, yeah, I mean,
from it. Hey there, gamers.
Yeah.
We only get a couple of D&D books a month nowadays, or a year nowadays. Big damn deal when we finally get one. And today we're going to talk about
Volo's Guide to Monsters.
All right, A-Camp cut. Let's